The summer sun was still low over Maplewood Drive, spilling golden light across the freshly manicured lawns and rows of identical suburban houses. Each home was a mirror image of the next: white vinyl siding, gray shingles, black shutters, all perfectly orchestrated like a symphony of conformity. And then there was my house. I had just moved in 3 months ago, full of excitement about starting a new chapter. After years of cramped apartments and noisy neighbors, this was my slice of the American dream. A cozy two-story with a wraparound porch, a backyard big enough for weekend barbecues, and most importantly, no one stomping on the ceiling above me at 2 a.m. The previous owners left everything in move-in ready condition, which meant it looked like a page ripped out of a builder's catalog. It was nice, sure, but bland. Sterile, even. So, when my sister, Jess, came to visit one Saturday morning, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Mia, it looks like a hotel lobby threw up in here. You need some personality, girl." She wasn't wrong. So we took a trip to the hardware store, bought throw pillows, rugs, a few bold art pieces. And then, I saw it. That deep, bold color swatch that made my heart skip. Crimson Ember. It wasn't just red, it was rich, dramatic, powerful. The kind of color that made a statement. I pictured it immediately, my front door, glowing like a ruby against the plain white siding, standing proud in a street of cookie-cutter conformity. Jess grinned. "That's it. That's you." The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee, threw on an old t-shirt, and started painting. The transformation was instant. The sunlight hit that glossy red finish, and, for the first time, the house felt like mine. I didn't think much of it, until 2 days later when the envelope arrived. It was thin, crisp, and stamped with the words Maplewood Homeowners Association in bold black letters. I tore it open casually while sipping coffee, expecting some friendly, "Welcome to the neighborhood" note. Instead, my eyes froze on the first line. Violation notice. Unauthorized exterior modification. I blinked, reading it again. Violation? What the hell? The letter continued in a tone so smug I could practically hear it sneering. "Our records indicate that you have altered the color of your front door without prior approval from the Maplewood HOA. Section 14B clearly states that all exterior modifications must maintain community standards, including the approved palette of colors. Your current door color, red, is not within the approved range. You are hereby instructed to repaint your door to an approved color within 14 days to avoid fines." My jaw tightened. Approved palette? For a door? Was this a joke? I marched to my laptop, pulled up the HOA's website, and sure enough, there it was, a list of acceptable door colors. Beige, taupe, gray, black, white, and, for those feeling daring, a muted forest green. I slammed the laptop shut, heat rising in my chest. Beige. They wanted beige. That night, I called Jess. "You're not gonna believe this," I said, pacing the kitchen like a caged tiger. She laughed when I told her. "Mia, this is what happens when you move to suburbia, USA. Everything's gotta match, or Karen down the street has a meltdown." "It's a door, Jess. A door. It's not like I built a neon sign or parked a circus elephant in the driveway." But the HOA didn't care. They wanted compliance. They wanted uniformity. And they had rules. The next day, I got a knock on the door. When I opened it, there stood a woman straight out of a sitcom. Late 50s, stiff blonde bob, pearl necklace, and a pastel cardigan that looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. She held a clipboard like it was an extension of her arm and introduced herself with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, I'm Carol," she said sweetly. "I'm the president of the Maplewood HOA." Of course she was. "I wanted to talk to you about your front door," she continued, her tone light, but laced with something sharp. Well, it's not exactly in harmony with the community aesthetic." "Harmony," I repeated, forcing a smile. "It's a door, not a choir." Carol chuckled, like I'd told a cute joke. "We have guidelines, dear. They're in place to protect property values. Bright colors can send the wrong message." "The wrong message? It's a color, not graffiti." She tilted her head sympathetically, like I was some poor misguided soul. "I understand you're new here, and these things can be confusing, but we do need you to comply. If you don't, we'll have to issue fines." And just like that, she handed me another letter, this one with a number printed in bold at the bottom. $250 per week for noncompliance. My hands shook as I held the paper. "You can't be serious." Her smile didn't budge. Rules are rules. Then she turned, walking down my porch steps with the grace of someone who'd won a battle without breaking a sweat. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at that bright red door. It was beautiful. It was mine. And I'll be damned if I let some clipboard-wielding dictator tell me what I can or can't do in my own home. But I didn't know then just how far this would go, or how far I'd go to fight back. And trust me, I went farther than anyone expected. For the next 2 days, I couldn't look at my door without feeling a mix of pride and rage. Pride because it was stunning, sunlight-kissed that read like it was born to be there. Rage because every time I saw it, I remembered Carol's smirk and that ridiculous phrase, in harmony with the community aesthetic. On day 3, another letter arrived. Same HOA letterhead. Same smug tone. This is your second notice. Failure to comply will result in the imposition of fines starting September 1st. That date was 6 days away. Jess was on speakerphone when I read it aloud. Mia, you have 2 options, she said. 1. Paint it beige and be done with it. 2. Burn their whole rulebook to the ground. Option 2. I said without hesitation. She laughed, but I wasn't joking. The next day, I marched into the Maplewood HOA office, a sterile little building tucked behind the community pool. Inside, the air smelled like printer ink and self-importance. Carol sat behind the front desk, flipping through a binder like the queen on her throne. Well, hello, Mia, she said, that same tight smile plastered on her face. I was just about to send you another notice. Save the postage, I snapped. We need to talk about this door nonsense. Her brows arched. Nonsense. Yes, nonsense. It's a color. It's not obscene. It's not offensive. It's a door, Carol. Her voice stayed calm, almost amused. The rules exist for a reason. When you bought your home, you agreed to abide by them. I leaned on the counter. Show me the rule that says I can't have a red door. She pulled out the binder and turned it toward me. Section 14B, in black and white. All exterior modifications must adhere to the approved color palette listed in Appendix A. She flipped to Appendix A, and there it was, the most depressing list of shades I'd ever seen. Neutral tones maintain visual harmony, she explained as if reading from a script. Red is considered disruptive. Disruptive? I scoffed. You make it sound like I painted flames and skulls on it. Her smile thinned. If you'd like, you can submit a variance request for consideration at the next HOA board meeting. When's that? 2 weeks. I almost laughed. So, I keep the door red, rack up fines for 2 weeks, and maybe you consider letting me keep it? Carol shrugged. Those are the rules. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, seething. They wanted a war. Fine. I'd give them one. First, I started digging. I read the HOA bylaws cover to cover. I joined a Facebook group for Maplewood residents. And oh, the things I found. People hated the HOA. They hated Carol. Stories poured in about arbitrary fines, grass half an inch too high, a garden gnome deemed inappropriate, a kid's basketball hoop that disrupted the aesthetic. I wasn't alone. By the end of the night, I had a plan. Step 1, stall. If they wanted me to repaint, I'd drag my feet. Send letters. Ask questions. Demand clarifications. Bureaucracy could work both ways. Step 2, galvanize support. If I was going down, I wasn't going alone. The next morning, I posted a photo of my door in the community Facebook group with the caption, "Apparently this is a crime in Maplewood." Thoughts? Within hours, the comments exploded. Are you kidding me? That looks amazing. They fined me for planting sunflowers last summer. Carol is out of control. HOA equals Homeowners Oppression Association. I started getting private messages from neighbors who were sick of the tyranny. A guy named Tom invited me to his garage that evening. Apparently, he and a few others had been talking about forming a committee to challenge the HOA's authority. When I showed up, the scene was straight out of a rebellion movie. 5 neighbors sitting on folding chairs around a workbench, whispering like we were planning a heist. Tom was a big guy with a beard and a baseball cap. "You're the red door girl," he said with a grin. "You've got guts." "It's just a door," I said, but inside, I felt a spark of something. Defiance. Unity. "We've been looking for someone to light a fire under people," said a woman named Lisa. "That door of yours? It's the match." We spent the next 2 hours plotting. Not just about my door, but about the bigger picture. The arbitrary rules, the lack of transparency, the unchecked power Carol and her cronies wielded. By the time I walked home under the glow of the streetlights, My heart was pounding with adrenaline. This wasn't just about a door anymore. This was about control, about standing up for what's right. But the HOA wasn't going to back down quietly. I found that out the next morning when I opened my mailbox and saw the envelope marked Final Notice. I tore it open, and my stomach dropped. Failure to comply by September 1st will result in immediate fines and a lien placed on your property. A lien. Over a door. I sank onto the porch steps, gripping the letter with trembling hands. They were willing to take my home over this. My home. And that's when the fear crept in. For the first time, I wondered if I was in over my head. But fear is a funny thing. It can break you, or it can harden you like steel. As I stared at that crimson door, gleaming in the morning sun, I knew one thing. I wasn't backing down. What I didn't know was that my next move would turn the entire neighborhood upside down. The 1st of September arrived like a ticking time bomb. I'd been counting down the days, each one marked by another threat from the HOA. The fines were set to kick in that morning, and the lien was no longer an empty threat. They'd filed the paperwork. Over a damn door. I barely slept the night before. My mind kept looping through the same question. What's the line? When do I give up? But every time I pictured Carol's smug little smile, I shoved the thought away. No, I was in too deep to quit now. So, I decided to do something dramatic. It started with a trip to the hardware store at sunrise. The employees barely looked at me as I wheeled a cart stacked with cans of paint, dozens of them, in every color of the rainbow. Blue, yellow, orange, teal, pink, purple. If they thought my red door was a crime, they hadn't seen anything yet. Back home, I got to work. I didn't repaint the door. Oh no, I painted the entire porch. Each column a different shade. The steps a bold electric blue. The railing a gradient of sunset orange to fuchsia. And right in the center of it all, my crimson door, standing proud like the queen of chaos. By the time I finished, sweat dripping down my back, the house looked like an artist had exploded all over it. It was loud. It was obnoxious. It was glorious. I stepped back, admiring my masterpiece, and thought, let's see you call this in harmony, Carol. I didn't have to wait long. At 8 o'clock sharp, a black SUV pulled up in front of my house. Out stepped Carol, flanked by 2 other HOA board members. Clipboards in hand, power in their stride. Carol froze when she saw it. Her jaw dropped, her face turning a shade of red that almost matched my door. What? She said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. Have you done? I smiled sweetly from my porch swing, sipping iced tea like I was born for Southern drama. Good morning. Isn't it fabulous? This is a violation of every regulation in the book, she shrieked. Oh, I checked, I said calmly. Your bylaws specifically say I can't change the door color without approval. But the porch? The columns? The steps? Not a word. The man next to her, a wiry guy with a permanent frown, flipped through his binder. She's technically right, he muttered. Carol shot him a death glare before turning back to me. You're mocking this association. Oh, Carol, I said with a smirk. You started it. By now, neighbors were pouring out of their houses, phones in hand, recording every second. Someone cheered. Another yelled, Go, Mia. Carol's face twisted with rage. You've left us no choice. We're issuing the maximum fine and moving forward with the lien. I stood, walked to the edge of the porch, and held her gaze. Do that, and you'll regret it. Her eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's a promise, I said softly. Then I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook Live, and started streaming. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to show you what the Maplewood HOA is doing to me because I dared to paint my front door red. They're threatening to take my home over this. Can you believe that? The comments flooded in instantly. That's insane. Sue them. What kind of dictatorship is this? Within minutes, the stream had hundreds of viewers, not just neighbors, but friends, friends of friends, strangers who loved a good David versus Goliath story. Carol's eyes darted to the camera, panic flickering across her face. Turn that off, she hissed. Freedom of speech, I said sweetly. Isn't America great? That's when things spiraled. Tom and Lisa showed up, leading a small army of angry neighbors. They carried signs. Yes, actual signs that said things like, down with HOA tyranny, and let Mia paint. Someone even brought a megaphone. Carol tried to shout over the noise, but it was too late. The rebellion had begun. By the afternoon, my little protest was trending online. Local news vans rolled in, reporters shoving microphones in my face. What started this dispute? Do you think the HOA is abusing its power? What's your next move, Mia? And that's when I dropped the bombshell. I'm filing a lawsuit, I said, my voice steady, for harassment, abuse of authority, and emotional distress. And I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for every homeowner who's been bullied by these ridiculous rules. The crowd erupted in cheers. Carol looked like she might actually faint. By sunset, the board members had slunk away, their clipboards useless against the tidal wave of public outrage. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. They'd fight back. They always did. And when they did, I'd be ready. What I didn't realize was that the climax hadn't even hit yet. That would come a week later, in a courtroom packed with reporters, cameras flashing, and Carol sitting across from me with a smile that said, "This isn't over." But she was wrong. It was almost over. Almost. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where people either lost everything or walked out victorious. I wasn't sure which side I'd fall on yet. My palms were sweating, my heart hammering like a bass drum as I stepped into the courtroom, reporters buzzing like flies behind the glass doors. The lawsuit had gone viral. My Facebook Live video hit over 1 million views, and hashtags like #LetMiaPaint and #RedDoorRebellion were trending for days. People sent me messages from all over the country, neighbors, homeowners, even former HOA victims, telling me to fight. And fight I did. I hired a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Dana who looked like she'd chew up HOA presidents for breakfast. She was a pit bull in heels, and from the first meeting, she made one thing clear. "We're not just defending you," she said, flipping through the HOA bylaws. "We're taking them down." When Carol walked in, she was all pearls and pastel power suits, her hair sprayed into a helmet of authority. Behind her, 2 HOA board members trailed like nervous ducklings. They wouldn't even look at me, but Carol did, and that look could have curdled milk. The judge, a gray-haired man with glasses perched on the end of his nose, called the session to order. Carol's lawyer, a thin, oily man in an expensive suit, went first. He launched into a monologue about community standards and preserving property values, painting me as a reckless troublemaker who'd single-handedly disrupted the sanctity of Maplewood Drive. Dana let him talk, arms crossed, her expression cool as ice. When it was her turn, she stood, heels clicking like gunshots on the tile floor, and dropped a folder on the table with a thud. "Your Honor," she began, voice calm but laced with steel, "this case isn't about a door. It's about abuse of power. It's about an HOA that has overstepped its legal authority and harassed my client for exercising her basic property rights." She flipped open the folder, pulling out printed screenshots. Every threatening letter, every Facebook post from neighbors complaining about Carol's reign of terror, every inconsistency in the bylaws. Maplewood HOA claims my client violated Section 14B. But Section 14B is ambiguous at best and unenforceable at worst. And let's not forget, there is no legal precedent for fining someone over the color of a door unless the rule is clear, agreed upon, and fairly enforced. This was none of those things. Carol shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The judge's brow furrowed. Dana pressed on, her words slicing through the silence like a blade. "And while we're on the subject of enforcement, let's talk about selective enforcement." She slid a photo across the table. "See this? Carol's house. 2 years ago. A wreath on her front door, bright red, visible from the street. A clear violation of Appendix A, which states all decorations must be neutral in color. Did she fine herself? Of course not." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Carol's face flushed scarlet. By the time Dana finished, the judge looked ready to throw the HOA rulebook out the window. He called a brief recess, and when he returned, his verdict was swift and merciless. The court finds the HOA's actions to be arbitrary and retaliatory. The fines and lien are null and void. Furthermore, the association is ordered to pay the plaintiff's legal fees and $10,000 in damages for emotional distress. My knees nearly buckled. $10,000. Legal fees covered. And most importantly, I got to keep my red door. The reporters swarmed as soon as I stepped outside, cameras flashing like fireworks. "Mia, how do you feel?" I laughed, tears streaming down my face. Like I just won the Super Bowl of HOA battles. But the best part? The twist Carol never saw coming. 2 weeks later, a special election was held. Thanks to the uproar and the signatures we gathered, the entire HOA board was up for recall. Carol tried to rally her supporters, but it was hopeless. The neighborhood had spoken. She was out. Guess who they voted in as the new president? Me. I didn't even want the job at first, but Tom convinced me. You can't just win the battle, he said. You gotta make sure nobody else goes through this crap again. So I accepted. My first order of business? Abolish the ridiculous color restrictions. In fact, we started a new tradition, Door Freedom Day, a summer weekend where everyone paints their doors whatever color they want. Walking down Maplewood Drive now is like stepping into a rainbow. Yellow doors, turquoise doors, even a purple one with glitter. And right in the middle, mine, bold, beautiful, and unapologetically red. People still stop me sometimes, asking if I regret all the drama. My answer is always the same. Hell no. That door didn't just change my house. It changed everything. I glance at it every morning before work, sunlight dancing off that crimson finish, and I smile. Because it's more than a door now. It's a symbol. A reminder that sometimes, standing your ground means kicking it wide open, paintbrush in hand. And Carol? Last I heard, she moved to Florida. No HOA. No power. Just her and her pastel cardigans. God bless America. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.